Okay, so here in Create, I have set up a mat that's 12 by 19, which would be the cutting mat. Now, if I were going to be cutting, like a bunch of different pieces of material, individual material, and then wanting to, have my shapes to kind of represent where the pieces are, I would use this particular type of layout. But with a print and cut, I do not. And it's not that you can't, but I just find that it makes so much more sense to make this cutting mat here, this online mat, make it the material dimensions instead of the mat dimensions, even though I will be placing my printout onto the solo mat. So I come over to the document panel. Let me pop it out. And in this drop-down menu, you can see I set up a custom one that is a solo mat, but I'm going to set up one that's 8 by 10. And so the way I do that is, you select custom mat, and then for the width, I put in 8, and then I put in 10. If I'm going to be using it a lot, then I'm going to save it as a preset, 8 by 10. And then I can always come back and I can grab that when I need it. So there it is. And then I don't want the grid on because there is no grid on a piece of paper. So now then I'm looking at the actual piece of paper that I will be printing onto. And then that helps me better with laying out different shapes and stuff and trying to, be efficient with the available area. The next thing is that on the document panel is, and this is also, I think, really important for print and cut, is to turn on show print margins and show reg marks, because this is going to also show you what kind of area you have available and make sure it prints correctly. Well, you can tell right away that my page, my reg marks are only showing up. Well, I can see one up here, I can see one off the mat, and these are below. And that's because my printer is set up for letter size printing. So I'm going to go to File, Print Setup, and this would be page setup on a Mac. I'm going to select this, and then I'm going to change my size. First of all, make sure you have the right printer, and then I'm going to change my size to 8 by 10. And then click on OK. And then you'll see everything, shifts. And now then, for this particular printer, this is the area I have available. The dashed line is the print borders, and then of course the reg marks, are the reg marks. The other thing is about these reg marks. You'll notice they're fairly small. And I had learned early on from the owner of the factory that manufactures these camera cutters was that the camera actually finds the marks faster if they're not really big. Now, you can't go down to like microscopic ones, but what I use, and I find it works really well for me, is I use them at 0.5 centimeters. You can use them at 1 centimeter, but again, the larger they are, it's not going to make it more successful. And quite contrary to that, this will make it a little bit faster, and it gives you more available room for your shapes. Also, I have mine set to mark inset from print bounds, which means it's the distance, the reg marks are going to be positioned based on the distance from this dash border. And so I can set that nice and small. Some people put it at 0.1. The thing is that you don't want to use, if I were going to use page bounds is based on the white area here of the mat. And so, and you can use that. It's just that when I click on save, you'll watch them, they'll move closer out, and see now then they're outside my print bound. So that's not going to work. So let's come back here, and I'm going to change them back. But if I use print bounds, then I know it's based on what my printer margins are. So, and then this can also change if you have more than one printer. So this is why you've got to pay attention. Think about which printer you're going to use if you have multiple printers, because if I change this to my Canon printer, which doesn't have as much room available, and then let's change this to 8 by 10 for it. I click on OK. It worked, but these moved up. You'll see that my reg marks aren't as far down. And so if I'd used page bounds, these might have been fine depending on where I set them, but these might not have, because Canon printers always require more of a margin at the bottom. Okay. So I just kind of wanted to cover that because it's something that sometimes people will run into problems with that, and their reg marks aren't being scanned, or they're not being printed, or something like that. And you'll see that when I switched to printers, it automatically went back to letter, because that's the default set in Windows for that particular printer. That's, under my print settings, that's what's set as the default. So again, I'm going to come back and change this to 8 by 10, and then I can see they're going to work. Okay, so from there then, I'm going to go ahead and do all my stickers. Now, the sticker project I'm using here happens to be what's called easy peel stickers. So there are two different cut lines. The inner one is set to score. The red lines are set to score. The blue lines are set to full cut, so that I can kiss cut at a lower force for the inner ones and then a full all the way through the sheet cut for the outer ones. And then in terms of arranging them, remember that Create allows you to have, in the camera, allows you to have your cut lines outside the borders of the printing, okay? As long as what you're really just looking for is anything that's going to be printed needs to be inside the border. So these little creatures here, these can't extend beyond the print boundaries, but the cut lines can. The cut lines, of course, can't extend beyond the sheet. In fact, you really don't even want them touching the edge of the sheet because they might kind of tend to cut a little bit off the sheet, and that could be disastrous. But this is what gives, various sticker makers a lot of freedom in terms of filling in the available area with whatever, stickers that they want to make on that particular sheet, much more so than any other cutter I've ever worked with in the past or read about. So anyway, so then I have all of these set up. Now then, let's say I go ahead and send this to print, and then I've got some more simulations here. I've got my little simulated sheet here, and then also a simulated mat. Okay, so now then let's zoom out a little bit. Okay, so the thing about the sheet, and let me select all of this, and I'm going to move it over. So take it from the room. Okay, so my sheet that I print out, I can put it on the mat anywhere I want. Doesn't matter. Okay, because of the fact that again, everything is based on, in a print and cut, is based on where that first reg mark is located. So that's just a matter of you, the user, when you put it on the mat, is to make sure that you put the blade tip right over this reg mark. Let me move this up to the top so it shows up. So that little area there right around that reg mark. So that's, of course, where you're going to put the blade tip. And then from there, it's going to read those. And the solo itself, it doesn't care about the mat. The mat is that's just your method of getting the printout to feed in and out of the machine. But the solo isn't scanning. It doesn't go, oh yeah, there's a mat. Well, wait a minute, where's that? Where's the printout? The printout's not in the right place. It doesn't matter. The only thing that does matter, and we see this sometimes, is that the printout needs to be right side up. So you always look at your screen in Create, and then look over here on the mat. And of course, unless there's just some really amazingly important reason, don't use landscape, just use vertical. I do have a video on how you can do this, and you can have two printouts on the same mat, but that's a very detailed video and something by all means, you can go through and read about how it all works. But in general, it's just faster and easier, unless you're in a production mode, to just do one printout at a time on the mat. And what I do, I just have more than one mat. And then that way, while one of them's cutting, I'm setting up the other printout onto that mat in the same spot. I always pick a spot. Let's say it's exactly 1 inch from the right-hand edge and 1 inch up, like on the grid. And I'll make sure it's always in the same spot. And then it makes it very easy just to load in that next mat into the same spot, and then and then you don't have to keep resetting this origin down here. So anyway, I think that covers everything that I wanted to talk about in this particular video. And as always, if you have questions, please reach out.